Hi, and welcome to Mrs. PM Reads. We are continuing in The Magic Circle by Katherine Neville. And in our last video, we were in 1989, and we discovered that Sam, Ariel's stepbrother, cousin, both, is alive. Yes. So that's where it ended. Was like, wow. So we're continuing in. Now this section is called The Rune, or at least this poem on the page. Marcias, black, black, intolerably black. Go, specter of the ages, go. Suffice it that I passed beyond. I found this secret of the bond, of thought to thought, through countless years, through many lives, in many spheres, brought to a point in the dark design of this existence that is mine. I knew my secret, all I was, all I am. The runes complete when all I shall be flashes by like a shadow on the sky. Olympus. Through life, through death, by land and sea, most surely I will follow thee. And that was written by Aleister Crowley, AHA. Sounds old. Okay, so they haven't changed the time. So we're still in 1989, and this is Ariel. I had to sit down and fast. The blood drained from my brain like the vortex in a sink. As I dropped like a rock into my chair, I ducked my head until my forehead was grazing on my knees to keep from blacking out. Sam was alive. Alive. He was alive, wasn't he? Or maybe I was dreaming. Things like that happen sometimes in dreams. Things could seem very real, but Sam's voice was still there, humming in my ear, though I just returned from his funeral. It was clearly time for a sanity check. Are you there, Ariel? Sam sounded worried. I can't hear you breathing. It was true. I had stopped breathing. It required conscious effort to begin again, to jumpstart even this most basic autopilot function. I swallowed hard, gripped the arm of my chair, straightened up, and forced myself to squeak out a reply. Hi, I said into the mouthpiece. I sounded ridiculous, but what on earth was I supposed to say? I'm sorry. I know what you must be going through right now, Ariel, Sam said, the understatement of the century. But please, don't ask questions until I can explain. In fact, it's dangerous for you to say anything at all unless you're completely alone. I'm not, I told him quickly. All the while, I was still trying to harness my runaway brain and bring my biorhythms under some semblance of control. I figured, said Sam. I've been phoning since this morning, but I just hung up whenever somebody else answered. Now that I've got you, the first thing we have to do is find a clean phone line so I can fill you in right away on what's happened. You could phone me at home, I suggested, trying to be careful in my choice of words. I also slid my wheeled desk chair a bit farther from where Oliver, with his back to me, was still tapping away at his terminal. No good. Your home phone is bugged, said Sam. Who would know such things? This office line's clean, at least for the moment, long enough for us to work out a plan. Your car isn't safe either, he added, anticipating my next question. Someone broke into it and did a thorough search. I left those knots there to warn you. I hope you haven't stashed anything of significant value in your car or your house. I'm sure you're being watched by real professionals, and most of the time. Real professionals? What was that supposed to mean? That I was somehow embroiled in this spy thriller too? That was about all I needed to hear on top of everything else I'd been through in the past 24 hours. And though I did wonder what Sam meant by anything of significant value, I had to restrict myself to, I didn't notice anything. Instead of missing, I added out of order. Now Oliver was standing up and stretching. When he glanced over towards me, I swiveled my chair away to face my own desk and started acting as if I were taking important technical notes on my phone conversation. The blood was still pounding in my head, but I knew I had to get Sam off the phone, and quickly. I asked him, "What do you suggest?" "We need to arrange a way that you and I can talk at appointed times without letting on to those watching you that you're trying to conceal anything, like no ducking into phone booths out on the street," which, in fact, had been my first idea. Scratch that. "On the computer?" I asked, still scribbling on my pad. I wished to God that Oliver would take a hike. "Computer," said Sam, "not safe enough. Any a-hole can hack into a government computer, especially a security computer. We'd have to work out a multi-layered code for protection, and we don't have time. There's a cowboy bar called the No Name down the road from your office. I'll phone you there in 15 minutes. "I have a meeting with my boss in 15 minutes, I told him. I'll see if..." Just then, with immaculate timing, the pod poked his head in at the door. "Ben, I've cleared the decks a bit earlier than I expected. Come into my office as soon as you've finished there. We have something important to discuss." "Okay, I guess I've got to go," Sam was saying in my ear. Oliver started to follow the pod to the meeting as Sam added, "Let's make it an hour from now instead. If you're still tied up, I'll just keep phoning there every 15 minutes or so until I reach you. And Ariel, I'm really, really sorry about all of this." Then the line went dead. My hand was shaking as I put the receiver back in its cradle, and I tried to stand up on wobbly legs. The pod had halted at the door and was telling Oliver, "You won't be needed at this meeting. Just Ben here. I'm borrowing her for an emergency project for a couple of weeks, a little firefighting, helping Wolfgang Hauser of the IAEA." He went out the door, and Oliver sank back to his seat with a groan. What did I ever do to deserve this? "My prophet Moroni?" he asked, casting his eyes towards the ceiling as if expecting to find the Mormon prophet hovering there. Then he looked at me angrily. "You do realize this means I've also lost the whole year's budget for the microcolored vegetable pastas from northern Italy and my allowance for gourmet wine vinegars with herbs and sugars." "Oh, Oliver, I'm so sorry," I said, patting him on the back as I went out the door in a kind of a daze. Holy S-word. This was shaping up to be an extremely interesting day. The Idaho site where I worked was the premier site in the world when it came to nuclear safety research. That is, we studied how accidents happened and how they could be prevented. The topic in our field that had recently gained particular prominence, waste management, dovetailed as it happened with the exact project Oliver and I had been working on for the past 5 years. Oliver and I controlled the largest database in existence to identify and monitor where toxic, hazardous, and transuranic material were stored or buried. As pioneers in the field, we felt it only right that we'd also accumulated the world's largest stockpile of scatological humor, quips like Other people's waste products are our bread and butter. But Oliver and I were small fare. The real bread and butter of the research done here in Idaho consisted of the wide-ranging tests on meltdowns and other types of accidents at our reactors out in the lava desert. Though it wasn't surprising that the International Atomic Energy Agency, watchdog to the world, would send a representative like Wolfgang Hauser to Idaho to share ideas on such topics, I was unprepared for what the pod was now telling me about this forthcoming mission. Ariel, you're aware of the problems going on just now in the Soviet Union? Were his first words when I was seated in his office and he'd shut the door. Well, of course. I mean, it's on the 6 o'clock news every night, I replied. Gorbachev had hell to pay, introducing freedom to a country that had imprisoned or slaughtered millions of people just to keep them from discussing it over tea. The IAEA is concerned, the pod went on, that the Soviet Union might lose control of some of its republics, permanently lose control, that is, that there might be large stockpiles of nuclear weapons and materials in these places, not to mention the breeder reactors they're so fond of, many of which are antique and inadequate control systems. All that falling into the hands of untrained provincials with no centralized authority, nothing to lose, and everything to gain by the situation. Holy moly, I said. There's a 3-dot pause there. It wasn't just me. So, what can I do to help out? He threw back his head and laughed, a surprisingly warm and open laugh. Despite his well-deserved reputation, much of the time I couldn't help but genuinely like Pastor Owen Dart, a wiry, rugged former Army boxing champ and Vietnam vet. He wore his shaggy bronze hair and leathery, battered face as badges of his inner nature. Though he was barely taller than I, the pod was a scrappy fighter who only did better coming out of tight corners. But I was still relieved that I'd never had to cross him. Unfortunately for me, all that was about to change. Your assignment, you mean? The pod was saying. I'll leave that to Wolf Hauser when he returns. Had I known you were back already, I would have detained him long enough to meet you. But he's out doing field work the rest of this week. I can tell you this much, though, not for publication. Your involvement will require that you accompany Dr. Hauser to Russia in a few weeks. The arrangements are already underway. Russia? I couldn't go flitting off to Russia, not with Sam newly resurrected from the grave, dodging a squad of hitmen from God knows where, and lurking only a few yards from here in the parking lot, leaving messages for me on bits of string. Sam and I thought we were having trouble communicating now, but as far as I knew, they didn't even have working phones in the Soviet Union, much as I fancied the idea of an intimate foreign boondoggle with the gorgeous pine-scented Dr. Wolfgang Hauser. I knew I must put a stop to this at once. I'm grateful for the opportunity, sir, I told the pod, but frankly, I don't see how I can help with this project. I've never been to Russia, and I don't speak the language. I'm not a PhD, chemist, or physicist, so I wouldn't know what I was classifying if it walked up and bit me. My job has always been security, tagging and tracking what other people have already dug up and identified. Besides, you told Oliver Maxfield this job would only last a few weeks and wouldn't take me away from our own project. I was out of breath from this backpedaling, but it seemed my canoe was going nowhere. Don't worry, the pod assured me in a non-reassuring voice. I had to tell Maxfield something, or he would have wondered why he wasn't included in this. After all, you're co-directors on your project. I wanted to ask why, indeed, Oliver had not been included. But the pod's voice had taken on that detached tone he often used with those whose funeral oration he had already prepared. He was on his feet and setting me out. I felt a chill in my bones at what I still had to do. The fact is, he added before we reached the door, the IAEA handpicked you months ago based on your record and my recommendation. It's been discussed fully and finalized. And frankly, Ben, you should leap at this chance. It's really a plum assignment. You ought to be kissing my hand for ensuring that you got it. I was reeling from the number of blows that had been delivered just since lunchtime. As he opened the office door, I blurted, "Besides, I don't even have a Russian visa." "That's been arranged," the pod said coolly. "Your visa will be handled by the Soviet consulate in New York." Curses, foiled again. Well, at least I had learned the bad news before my private phone chat with Sam. Maybe I could figure out something along with everything else we had to unravel to bail me out of this trip. By the way, the pod added in a more conciliatory tone as I was about to take my leave, I understand that the reason you were absent last week was to attend a family funeral. No one really close, I hope. Closer than I can say just now, I replied with a non-committal expression. I touched the pod's arm, but thanks for asking. As I went off down the hall, I glanced at my watch and wondered exactly how close to this spot Sam actually was. Then I went to put on my thermal gear and headed for the No Name Cowboy Bar. I think I'm going to stop there. I've got many, many pages set aside. That's kind of strange. No, we're going to stop right here. Oops, sorry. All right, you guys. So she's going to the No Name Cowboy Bar to meet Sam and try to get out of a Russian assignment. All right, you guys. Interesting. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time as the story continues.